Hello and welcome again to a new video, and this time we will talk about question 2 of the EAL external examination. So question 2, this is what is famously known as the infographic question, is a question where you will be given an infographic. So an infographic is a text that has both visual and verbal components at the same time. So there will be some images, they can maybe a map, maybe a graph, a certain design, colors as well. And there will also be some written verbal elements, maybe bullet points, numbers, figures, stats, paragraphs, keywords, key phrases, and so on. And all the questions in question 2 are analysis questions. And for these questions, the analysis type questions, they will be questions either about the main idea, the intended audience, the purpose, persuasive techniques and how effective those techniques are, and also questions whether the text is reliable or trustworthy or not. When we take a look at the 2022 and the 2023 exams, we can see that, again, the design of the exam is very similar, but the content is different every time. And we can see that the infographic, it has some visual elements, so there is a photograph in both, and some verbal elements as well. And we can see here there is a paragraph, there is this really big title at the middle, we have these bullet points here, another big phrase or a slogan at the end, and so on. And we also need to go back to the subject assessment advice, because that subject has really useful advice that we can benefit from when learning or when preparing for this exam. So when we go to the 2022 subject assessment advice, we find the following. With this focus and understanding, the more successful students responded with relevant and detailed responses, as they understood the key requirements of each question. For example, they did not just copy the information heard, nor did they just give their own thoughts and knowledge on the topic. Rather, they integrated ideas and language from the text into their own answers, thereby demonstrating their understanding. So it's very important that your responses are relevant. And they are not just relevant to the question, but also the kind of examples and evidence you mention from the text is relevant to your answer as well. Let me clarify this idea a little bit further. So when it comes to this section, in order to achieve a full mark, each response has to satisfy 4 conditions. The first condition is that the answer has to be a correct answer, obviously. And this alone isn't enough, because you also must include evidence from the text. And even if you include some evidence from the text, this is also not enough, because we have to make sure that the evidence matches the answer that we give. And lastly, we have to write in extended prose or paragraphs. So when we take a look at this example, question A says, who is the target audience for text 2? Give one example from the text to support your answer. If my response is written as such, if I just use bullet points and the first one I write Australians and the second one I write wombats are under threat in Australia, this answer is not a successful response. Why? Because it's not written in extended prose or paragraph, and these are just things I'm copying from the text. There is no evidence that I actually understand what I wrote. So this kind of responses are to be avoided during the examination. But what about a response like this one? So let's read this one first and see what's going on. The target audience is Australians because the text uses language that is directed towards those who care about animals. The text says, protect wombats from harm. And this is a clear call to action to those who care about wombats. Now, yes, the answer, or at least the first part of the answer, is correct. And yes, there is a quote from the text, And also, yes, this is written in the form of a paragraph. Yet, this is a very weak answer, and this is not a successful response. Why? Because you can take a look at what is the relationship between the evidence given and the answer itself. So the answer says the target audience is Australians, but the evidence is protect wombats from harm. These two things are not connected. It's like being asked in math class, why x to the power of 0 equals 1, and you say, well, because 1 plus 3 equals 4. So there is no relationship between the evidence, the justification, and the answer itself. And such an answer is a weak answer, and that's why the subject assessment advice said relevant. So again, it's not just relevant to the question, but also the evidence provided has to be relevant to the answer itself. And this response here, this is an example of a successful response. This is a response that would get a full mark. The target audience is Australian since the text mentions Australia explicitly multiple times, such in Australian nature needs our nurture now. The keywords here are both Australian and our. The author is using inclusive language as a call to Australians to take action. And in this one, we basically ticked all the boxes. The answer is correct. There is evidence from the text, the evidence matches the answer, and everything is written down in extended prose or in paragraphs. And when we go back to the subject assessment advice, we see that we didn't just copy information from the text, but we integrated the information from the text into our own answer, and we were able to demonstrate that we understand what we are writing and we understand the information we find in the text. Okay, so let's now go to the 2023 subject assessment advice, and there is a lot of useful advice. Actually, all of this is really, really important, and you should definitely go and read it thoroughly later today. But just to save time, I will only focus on two pieces of information. The first one is the less successful responses may have found an example from the text, but did not link it, in this case, to the purpose, because the question is about the purpose. But generally speaking, they didn't link it to the answer itself, which is why, like we said, correct answer, evidence from the text, and the evidence must match the answer, is linked to the answer. The second useful piece of advice is the less successful responses, they provided examples that didn't match the persuasive techniques mentioned. Again, this is a question about persuasive techniques, but generally speaking, when the example does not match the response, that is a weak answer, and that answer may not be given any marks, and if given a mark or two, it will not be a full mark. So you must make sure in both questions 2 and in questions 3 that you write in paragraphs, you have correct answers, you always have evidence from the text, and your evidence matches the answer. So let's see a few more examples here, and let's just read the questions and see if there is anything interesting that we can talk about. So for this exam, so we already discussed question A. For question B, what evidence in text 2 shows that the information provided is reliable? And you can find some guidelines on how to answer this question in the 2022 subject assessment advice. And you will see that for each question, there are a number of ways in which this question can be answered. And this is the beauty of the EAL exam, is for most questions, there isn't a single answer that either you get or you don't. There are so many different ways that you can express yourself with, and you can have a full mark in a lot of different ways. So you can have a student, for example, getting a full mark because they wrote this, and another student writes something different, and they also achieve a full mark, because the examiners are not looking for a specific idea or a specific singular thought that each student must say in question 2 and 3. The examiners are looking for evidence that you have the ability to understand the text, evidence that you have the ability to analyze the text, and also evidence that you have the ability to write down your analysis of the text using and incorporating elements from the text in your answer. This is what matters the most for examiners. So they don't care, for example, if you say, oh, this text is reliable because blah, 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 or this text is not reliable because blah, blah, blah. They don't care, for example, if you choose statistics as a persuasive technique while somebody else chose an expert opinion or a celebrity endorsement. That's not important. What's important for them is quite simple. Do you understand the question? Do you understand the text? And is there evidence of that in your answer? Do you have the ability to analyze the text? And do you have the ability to incorporate elements from the text in your response? If you can do this, you will achieve a full mark every single time. And basically for question 2, this is it. Here, for example, we have which emotive techniques are used in text 2. So when you give your responses, you have to focus on emotive techniques. So you can just, again, write whatever persuasive technique you find, because if you do that, the examiners will know that you did not understand the question correctly. And in every question, they say, support your answer. What evidence in the text? Discuss 2 examples. When we go to the 2023 exam, same thing. Support your answer. Support your answer. And here again, used in the text. So this is not about, you don't write your own opinions. You don't write ideas based on your knowledge. It's all about what is in the text, and your answers has to be focused on that. So I'm sure that the moment I will hit the off button in my recording, I will remember some important things that I didn't say, and I'm positive that I didn't cover all the information that we can talk about when it comes to question 2. I don't want to make a very, very long video, so if you have any questions about this section, feel free to leave me a comment, and I will do my best to respond to your comment. And if it is something that's worth making a new video about, I will definitely do so. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you the best.